Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the Cloud Lunch and Learn sessions. Today we have the second session of the security series with Bojan, and basically he's going to explain you all you need to know about securing your infrastructure as service and platform as service workloads. Hi Bojan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Hugo. Thank you.
Okay, are you happy to kick off?
Yes, I am, and thank you so much. And once again, from my side, hello, Cloud Entrepreneur. My name is Boyan, and I work with Microsoft as the Cloud Solution Architect, focusing on specifically security and compliance across our different offerings, such as infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. And my role is all about working with our partner ecosystem to help them build solutions to meet the needs of our customers. And once again, I'm delighted to be invited to this important conversation you're having around security. And I'm even more delighted to share with you and to give you today a glimpse into Azure Security and Azure Security Center and how we as Microsoft think about this very, very important topic and how our views may have even evolved over time, taking into consideration everything that we are seeing in the market. But before we jump into the presentation, I would like for us to just have a brief moment to get a sense from the audience on how much they're familiar with this topic. So why don't we start off with a few mentee questions? For those of you who haven't used it before, you just need to log on to mentee.com and enter the code 8700633 without spaces to get going. And let me then switch gears and switch quickly to Mentee. Okay, and we already have the first question. The first question is, what comes to mind when you hear the word security posture? We have a couple of answers showing up. You can enter more than one answer as well. So data protection, very, very valid. We have also encryption, um, also goes hand in hand with having a sound security posture. And interestingly enough, we also have firewall. Do we have maybe even more questions, more responses from the audience? Yeah, I see we have cryptography ties into encryption as well. Interesting. Another one we have WAP, web application firewall, awareness. That's an interesting one. What we're doing here also, kernel environment. And I also see self-knowing. Very, very interesting. I believe we can then go to our next question of today. And our next question is, what do you think is the number one cause of data breaches? And we have three options. The first one is poor cyber hygiene. Now, cyber hygiene, the Center for Internet Security refers to cyber hygiene as best practices and steps required to appropriately protect and maintain IT systems and devices. Second option is a lack of cybersecurity solutions. And the third option is insecure configurations. I can see we have two front runners, poor security hygiene and a lack of cybersecurity solutions. Now it seems like we have poor cyber hygiene or security hygiene in the lead. Very, very interesting. I love this kind of a feedback, and we are gonna be touching base on all of these, but you would be correct, and there is no right or wrong answer. However, what we are still seeing is the number one cause of data breaches is due to poor cyber or poor security hygiene. Thank you so much for that. So let me switch gears and go back to our presentation for today. Would be also great to get a very, very quick answer from the team if everyone is able to see my slides. I trust
all
everyone
good.
can see my
Yeah,
slides.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Here we go. The topic of my presentation today is really all about how we can improve the security posture of our workloads, whether those be in the cloud, such as infrastructure as a service and or platform as a service workloads, and it can be even hybrid workloads and even multi-cloud workloads. What I've thought I would do is to spend a little bit of a time talking about the security landscape to give you that grounding around the challenges and trends we are seeing in the market. There we can talk briefly about what challenges we are seeing in the market. And there I would also want to touch on something that's called the Cyberkill chain model and how that is applicable around protecting IaaS and PaaS workloads in Azure. But everything that we're talking today is relevant and applies to even hybrid and multi-cloud workloads. Then I want to touch on Microsoft's implementation in the form of Azure Security Center and talk a little bit about what are its main functionalities. And finally, I want to give you a glimpse into Security Center itself. And I would like to end on a high note with Q&A, time permitting. So that's our agenda for today. And I've thought just to touch briefly on the challenges that companies are facing. Here we see a couple of headlines from SC Magazine on just how important cloud security and cyber hygiene is. And unfortunately, still a significant portion of security breaches happen due to poor cybersecurity hygiene, which was also the most voted response in our mentee questions as well. If we continue to take a look at the security landscape, just to give us a sense of where we're headed, partners and customers that I work with is aligned with the research done by Forbes and Ponemon as the two companies referenced here a while ago. And the main challenge that companies or organizations are facing in this space was to be found insecure configurations, where even here we have numbers that 80% of cloud breaches in this year were expected to be due to a misconfiguration, even mismanaged credentials, and even insider threat. The second main challenge was having a complete visibility into security and compliance. Here we see a number that 68% of breaches take months or longer to discover, which is quite frightening, honestly. And the third one that we have also resonates if you were part of our previous session on how to leverage next generation cloud native SIEM solutions, where we also touched upon the third main challenge, which is also the increase in number and sophistication of attacks. So here we see two trends, both of which are alarming. So the overall number of cyber attacks is on the rise, as well as these attacks are beginning to be more and more sophisticated. And here we also have then the numbers from the research as well for your reference. Next, I thought I would just touch briefly on something referred to as the Cyberkill chain model. The best way to prevent attacks and potential data breaches is to identify attack vectors. Attack vectors are how an attacker might attack our environment. And to make this very, very real, Lockheed Martin initially developed something they refer to as the Cyberkill chain model. And what it is, it's a sequence of phases that can be used to represent a particular attack phase. And when we think of how to prevent attacks, we have a simplification of the Cyberkill chain on this slide, where we identified 4 main phases how an attacker might attack our environment. The first one is exposure, where any kind of an attacker is really looking for opportunities to gain access to our infrastructure, whether that infrastructure be in the cloud, in multi-clouds, or maybe even in hybrid and on-premises. When we are referring to the public cloud, we know that attackers leverage the factoid that customer-facing applications need to be open for legitimate users, such as clients of those customers, to access them. And thereby, those applications are exposed to the internet and may be susceptible to attacks. An attacker will then attempt to attack either, or maybe best to refer to exploit either weak credentials in that application, or maybe attack a specific vulnerability associated with that vulnerability to gain a foothold into the infrastructure. The next phase is when the attacker, once they've gained the foothold, will try to exploit an exposure to gain access to not only that specific application, but even more. And this can be done through either, again, compromised credentials, maybe compromised instances. We also had one of our mentee answers misconfiguration of resources in public cloud offerings. And once a instance or a resource has been compromised, an attacker can gain access to other resources as well, which brings us to the lateral movement stage, where the attacker then discovers what resources they have access to. And that then talks to the overall scope of the access that the attacker has. And if they're successful, in just 24 to 48 hours after a breach, the attacker would usually have complete control over the network, which would then bring us to the last stage. And the last stage is the actions that an attacker then might take on that said network and infrastructure. These are also dependent on the resources that they were able to gain access to during the retro movement phase. And they would typically take actions for a specific gain, which would be to launch an attack, for example, ransomware, or maybe even sabotage, or even maybe intellectual property theft. What I would like to highlight on this slide is, as you can see, this impacts different types of workloads. So we might have started with an application to begin with, but especially when we are referring to access, we need to widen the scope. We need to also assess our virtual machines, credentials, where data is potentially stored, such as either in databases or data stores, but even IoT devices, regardless if they are managed or unmanaged, to prevent that lateral movement, so an attacker spreading inside of a productive environment and the actions that they met and the harm that they may cause. And this brings us to our next slide. One thing I would like to highlight is, at one point in time, security experts recommended that organizations simply invest more in protecting their assets, meaning buying more cybersecurity solutions or building even better perimeter defenses. However, what we see today is that simply investing in protecting your assets is not good enough. Instead, organizations should really invest in building a solid security posture. And this slide is all about of what that security posture should be composed of. So we see 3 major pillars. According to the InfoSec Institute, the attackers may be on a network up to 200 days before they're detected. And that's a huge amount of time for someone such as an attacker to be inside of our network. That brings us to the key word, detected. Because without a good detection mechanism, it's almost impossible to disrupt an attack. And therefore, we should really invest and look to invest in a holistic solution to monitor not only cloud-based resources, but also hybrid and on-premises resources and workloads. And we all know that quickly detecting an attack is only half the battle, which is why it's important to use tools that leverage technologies such as either telemetry, behavior analytics, maybe even threat intelligence and or machine learning to correlate that data. And here it's also needed for us to adopt a new mindset where we need to actually assume breach, and we call it as an assume breach mentality, where previously we might have invested in a lot of solutions, and should have something have happened, such as cybersecurity incident or an attack that was successful, we might have seen this as failure in a sense, well, we just need to buy more solution. And as we covered just now, we want to build a holistic security posture where it goes from not only just protecting our perimeter, which is still relevant, but also having the capability to detect should something happen and then quickly respond to it. And that detection and respond is part of that assume breach mentality. And therefore, there are a couple of questions we should be asking ourselves. So if we assume breach, what's our mean time to detection and what's our mean time to remediation? So how quick are we to detect should have something happened? And then using either telemetry data or artificial intelligence, it can be even threat intelligence on the TTPs, so the techniques, tactics, and procedures used by potential attackers to respond quickly to it. These are the reasons why at Microsoft we've started to reimagine how a tool that provides both cloud security posture management and cloud workload protection capabilities can also leverage cloud native capabilities. And we're calling that solution Azure Security Center. When we look to Gartner, Gartner outlines CSPM, so Cloud Security Posture Management, as being a large group of functionalities that these solutions should encompass that we use to protect our cloud workloads such as infrastructure as a service and platform as a service workloads. But Gartner also goes beyond just the CSPM functionalities, and it also refers to cloud workload protection, so CWP functionalities, and that's all around threat protection. So how do we leverage threat protection capabilities to tackle some of the challenges we discussed earlier? And what Microsoft's implementation does is Azure Security Center being built on top of Microsoft's public cloud platform, which is Azure or Azure, depending on how you prefer to pronounce it. It offers not only the cloud security posture management capabilities, but it also offers the cloud workload platform protection capabilities to offer a limitless cloud scale, speed, making it suitable for companies big or small. And what it really provides is a unified way to strengthen that holistic security posture we were talking about. So to protect ourselves against these threats, Security Center provides us with the tools and with the capabilities we need to strengthen our security posture against threats and also get secured faster. Now, if we zoom into the strengthening of the security posture, we have a couple of functionalities and native capabilities highlighted here that might help. We start with Secure Score. What Secure Score gives us is an overall average, or how well did our workloads perform with addressing vulnerabilities and implementing overall security best practices and even compliance standards across the workloads that we are trying to protect and build that holistic security posture for. And this also ties into governance. So how do we then either deploy, configure, and or use the resources that we have in, for example, a public cloud offering? So how good are our policies and our governance models? And that should then be positively reflected in the secure score. And it's also possible for us to extend and customize those policies, meaning we can also make it very, very real for us as an organization to implement them or based on our requirements and based on our specific scenario. Here, I would also like to highlight the partnership that's going on between Azure Security Center, Microsoft, and the participants of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, or MISA, where we work together not only with peers, but also with other vendors to develop a thought leadership in this space and then facilitate not only the successful implementation of one specific vendor, but also third-party recommendations that we can also then surface as part of the Azure Security Score. Next topic I would like to go a little bit deeper into just briefly is the cloud workload platform protection. And this is again all around protecting against threats. And it applies not only to the resources we have on premises, it can also apply to the resources we have with other clouds. And it's not solely server specific, although we do support Linux and Windows servers, and we even offer a range of capabilities to even to things such as just-in-time access, where we harden the network control and harden the network access to those servers. But we also can facilitate these kind of capabilities and threat protection for other workloads, such as databases, for example. And if I'm not mistaken, we recently announced also capabilities for other resources and other workloads in the cloud that we might be using, such as Azure Storage, Azure Key Vault, for example, but also SQL servers that are running on Azure VMs. And just to do a short recap, so when we look at those two main buckets, now Azure Security Center has a lot of amazing functionalities, most of which we can then classify in these two main buckets. One being all around how do we assess our security posture, which Gartner refers to as Cloud Security Posture Management, or CSPM. And the other group of capabilities is all around how to protect those workloads against threats. And that's referred to by Gartner as CWP, so Cloud Workload Protection. And in Azure Security Center, you might find it under a different acronym, which is adding another P to it, which stands for platform. So CWPP, which is Cloud Workload Platform Protection. Now, you might be asking yourselves, well, what does then Get Secure Faster refer to? And it refers to automation. We don't live in a vacuum, that's for sure. So when we're looking to either deploy new resources or maybe refresh existing or replace existing resources, we should be looking to make this automatic or semi-automatic process, meaning when we do deploy new resources in, for example, Azure, apologies, we want to make sure that those are also automatically onboarded into the service for them to have that CSPM and that CWPP functionalities that they can leverage to. What we can also look to do is to streamline that data, or in the form of either raw data or maybe even rich context such as alerts, to a SIM solution that would then provide us that single pane of glass for all security relevant information that we have. In case you missed our last session, I would encourage you to check out the YouTube channel of Cloud Lunch and Learn, where you can find the session we did around the cloud native SIEM, which in Microsoft's case is Azure Sentinel. And Azure Security Center can be integrated natively through a connector, then with Azure Sentinel. And in Azure Sentinel, you would have that single pane of glass visibility. And that covers the three main pillars of Azure Security Center as a solution that implements both the cloud security posture management and the cloud workload platform protection capabilities, which tackle all the challenges that we covered previously. And what I've thought I'd do now is to give you a flavor for Azure Security Center. Let me switch gears and let me then go into a demo environment that I have set up. So hopefully everyone can still see my screen. And if I go now, I'm inside of the Azure portal. And if I was to go into the search bar and type in Security Center and click on it, I would land on the overview blade. And in the overview blade, I'm able to have a bird's eye perspective of all the resources that are currently associated with this Azure subscriptions and tenants, but I'm also able to tie in third-party cloud workloads and even hybrid, so on-premises workloads. What that gives me is then a holistic overview of my security posture in the form of Secure Score, where I can see how many controls in terms of best practices I have implemented. And it gives me even a percentage to let me know where do I stand currently. And what we would like to see is over time this score increasing. What we also have an overview is if we are looking to be compliant or our resources to be compliant with a specific standard or specific compliance controls, this is something we can already leverage. Compliance, regulatory compliance standards and controls out of the box. There is also the ability to customize and extend those for our specific needs should we need to. What we're also able to see in this bird's eye overview is the Azure Defender blade. Now, Azure Defender refers to the cloud workload platform protection capabilities that we covered. So this is all around how do we protect our cloud resources against threats. So let's go a little bit deeper into each one of these to give you an even better sense of what Security Center is all about. So if we start with Secure Score, let me quickly select Secure Score, and inside of our dashboard, you can see the subscription I have selected, which acts as a logical container, if you allow me to describe it as such, that groups the different resources we have together. Now, there is the ability to tie this also with other subscriptions, so I could have several here. I could even have those nested as part of a management group that will allow me then to even have read role-based access control on that management group, and every subscription would then inherit it as well for simplicity. If I go and select the subscription I have in my current demo environment, I'm able to see the overall, and I see someone wanted to say something. Do we maybe have a question?
I don't think so. Bojan, yeah, I don't think so. There was person that just joined and muted.
Thank you so much for that, Hugo.
Yeah, no worries.
I will try to also leave us with more than a couple of minutes towards the end for Q&A. I also encourage you, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to leverage the chat window in Teams. And that way, once we're through, I'll be happy to go through and answer each question and even follow up offline if we don't have time for it. What I selected here was the Secure Score. And Secure Score, if you remember, is all around what Gartner refers to as CSPM, so Cloud Security Posture Management. How can we ensure that we implement best practices and have these security controls implemented on all of our resources, not just in Azure, but it can also be on premises and other clouds, to make sure that we do have that security, that holistic security posture we were referring to. So when I select Secure Score, I see for this demo environment, there's still work needed to be done. Ideally, this should always increase over time. One question, and I can also see for this specific resources, what are the best practices? What are the remediations I could either do manually or automatically at scale? They're even sorted by a potential increase in score, meaning I even can then prioritize and understand which ones I should tackle first and which ones I can maybe implement later on once I've already implemented the ones which should then have the highest potential score increase. As soon as I've done that, it will reflect in secure score as well. Now, one thing which is super important that I want to highlight here is a question I get asked a lot. Well, we were on such a good track with secure score and then it dipped. So then it took a somewhat of a slight nosedive and it decreased. So what does that mean? Well, that refers to the overall maturity of an organization. We don't live in a vacuum, that's for sure. So when we look to deploy new resources, we need to also look at what's our governance model of deploying those resources. Are we deploying those resources in a secure way? If so, that's going to be then positively reflected in our secure score. Otherwise, our secure score might take a nosedive or a slight decrease, depending. And that's even more reason to go back and look at what's our overall maturity as the company, as the team responsible for deploying those resources. Do we have a good governance model in place? And do we have something which ensures, such as either policies, agreements with the other teams, to ensure that the resources that we do deploy to the cloud are that those deployments are done in a secure way and have these controls implemented. Now, if I go back to Security Center to the overview page, one thing you might be also interested is the regulatory compliance. When I select it as similar to Secure Score, we are going to see here the total number of controls for our environment. And again, this can also apply to hybrid and multi-cloud through the help of an agent. So here we see the overall controls. We see how many controls we need to implement to have it aligned to a specific regulatory standard. One question I do get asked a lot, but can we also implement our own standard? And the answer is yes. Although we have here the, if you allow me to call them the standards that are top of mind for most companies, such as the ISO 27001, which is part of many conversations I'm having, and also the Center for Internet Security, the Azure benchmark, and the newer version 1.1.0. However, you can still go ahead and implement your own standard. So if I go and select Manage Compliance Policy, what this will show us is a structure of the subscriptions that we have inside of this specific instance, inside of my specific tenant. And if I select this subscription that I would like for this to apply to, I see I can add more standards out of the box, or I can go ahead and I can create a custom standard. And this is done through the integration with Azure Policy, where I can go ahead and I can create something which is referred to as an initiative. And we could see an initiative as an overarching goal of many policies that we might have in place as well. I can also then enable or disable several standards I already have added. But for now, I'm going to leave it as it is, and I'm going to switch back to the overview blade. So we showcase how we can and again, we're working on that holistic security posture. So we've seen what security recommendations we can and best practices we can implement for our workloads. We also saw how we can ensure regulatory compliance for them. Another, as part of the inventory, is the ability to go and really zoom in on a specific resource. So if I go to showcase this, how it looks like is of the total resources that we have here, I'm able to see how much of them need improvement on, how much I would need to either install the agent on, or maybe enable the workspace to be monitored uh, by Azure Security Center, and that information then surfaces here. So if I select, for example, a virtual machine as one of the resources I have in this subscription, I'm able to see a rich context, which for some reason is taking a little bit of a longer time to load here. So maybe if I go back quickly, that might do the trick. I'm able to see the total number of recommendations per asset, which could be a specific resource such as a VM. It might be even the subscription. And once I've opened it and I'm now selecting it for a specific VM I have as part of my my Azure subscription, I can see what are the recommendations I can take, and even it's going to highlight the ability, if possible, to do something in terms of automatically doing this. So you would have not only such as myself in this always a demo environment, if this is a production environment, you would probably even have several hundred, maybe even 1,000 resources. So that quick fix comes very, very handy when you're looking to do automatic remediation at scale. And if I go back to the overview, I can also see Azure Defender as one of the tiles outlined here. And Azure Defender, again, refers to protecting these workloads against threats. So it covers what Gartner refers to as the Cloud Workload Platform Protection Capabilities, or CWPP. And if I select this, uh, fortunately, I don't have any threats in this demo environment, but nonetheless, I'm able to also do a more proactive approach here. Reactive would be just waiting to see security alerts and acting on those. And that's very, very reactive. It goes back to building that holistic security posture, not only protecting and detecting, but also responding to it. And as part of a more proactive approach to it, I can look to leverage one of the advanced protection capabilities that we have here. Now, these are resource dependent. So for example, for containers, we have image scanning. Others are applicable to a wider group of resources or broader group of resources, such as vulnerability assessment, which we also showcase, having the ability to install a vulnerability assessment on VMs or endpoints. Then having just-in-time access, which is all around having a user being eligible to access a specific resource for a determined period of time and having that even as part of a workflow. Then using machine learning on endpoints to discover which applications should be whitelisted and which applications shouldn't be running in the form of adaptive application control. And even in the form of adaptive network hardening, which is all around hardening that network access. So either by leveraging VNets to make sure that those resources that, or better said, that resources that shouldn't be publicly exposed are also protected, and only people who should have access to those can access them. We also have a couple of different options here, one related to IoT security, which I found personally very, very interesting, and also one around file integrity monitoring. So being able to track changes on a specific system, such as a VM. I hope that helps to provide you a glimpse into Azure Security Center and how Azure Security Center can be leveraged to build that holistic security posture. So not only to protect our workloads in infrastructure as a service, platform as a service workloads, but also how to detect should something happen, and also how to respond to them. With that, let me then switch gears and let me go back to our presentation for today. What I would like to also leave you with today is a call to action is to get started on this journey as soon as you can. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. And that's the end of my prepared remarks. And I believe we are going to have a Q&A now. So with that, do we maybe have any questions in the Q&A window, or in case anyone wants to come off mute and ask them? That's fine as well.
So Bojan, we don't have questions in the chat, but Mauricio wants.
Yeah, just a very simple question. Do we find this information also in the IZ 500 material? I mean, the exam that it's the maths indicated for the security.
That's a great question, Maurizio. The AZ 500 does cover, part of it covers also security operations. And as part of security operations, we can leverage not only the cloud native SIM of Microsoft, which is Azure Sentinel, but also so part of it does also take into consideration Account Security Center as well.
Okay, thanks.
You're most welcome. And thank you so much, Juarez, for also sharing the free security courses for Azure that we have. Those are also very, very useful. Any more questions?
Okay, it looks like we don't have more questions. So I assume that people are clear about the way they should go. Actually, I have one question for you, Bojan, just to clarify. So as best practice, considering a normal scenario that your organization is leveraging security center and Azure Sentinel, is it a good practice to definitely leverage the connector available and connect the security center with Azure Sentinel and manage everything related with security at the Sentinel level?
That's a very, very important point, Hugo. Thank you for reminding me on that. I actually wanted to also cover this. One of the best practices, regardless if it's Microsoft or any kind of cloud vendor, public cloud vendor, is to leverage the native cloud capabilities of that said vendor. Meaning, if we look at Security Center, you might have noticed when we were zooming in into virtual machines, there were ability to do remediation at scale. We also, through the partnership we have with peers as part of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Alliance, we also are starting to see more and more those vendor-specific recommendations being surfaced. So one huge best practice and is to leverage the cloud-native capabilities of a public cloud vendor. As such, going back to your question, it's definitely then the best practice to leverage Security Center as an overview of what's our all security posture, and then with the help of the connector, send that information or surface that information into a cloud native SIM, which could be Sentinel or it could be a different SIM as well. Sentinel is even better because of the cloud native integration that we have and because of they both are built on top of Azure, so they do have that cloud native capabilities of automatically scaling, making them suitable for companies big or small. I hope I understood your scenario.
Yeah, that's clear. Thank you. And in case you guys don't have any more questions, we should be good to just close the call, maybe. Any more?
In case we don't have any more questions, thank you so much for giving me the time today. I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to our next session, which is going to be around identity for developers in 1 week's time. Thank you for inviting me and take care, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much, Bojan. It was a great session, and so let me just share the link for the next session with the participants, so they can sign up for the session. So the link is on the chat. You can use the link to sign up for the next session next week, and we should be good. And happy Monday, and have a lovely week. Okay, so Pradeep, looks like Pradeep wants to talk. Pradeep, we are not able to listen to you. You are on mute. Ah, no, not anymore. Can you try to check your sound?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm not able to hear anything from Pradeep's side. Might be worthwhile checking again the settings in Teams for audio video, or just pasting any kind of a comment or question in the chat window. Happy to stay a little bit longer and answer any kind of follow-up questions.
Yeah, so Pradeep, feel free to just share your question or comments using the chat in this case. And I'm going to anyway stop the recording if that's okay. And thank you once again for attending, and thank you, Bojan. It was a great session.